Time for another video. Today is something different. Today we're playing 5100 with a 20 ante. As always, PLO6 high-low. On the table, the game says 5100. You might notice the chips looks like we're playing 510. But in this club, each chip is worth 10. So we are indeed playing 5100 with a 20 ante. That pot right there was a $10,000 pot. So these players I'm pretty familiar with. I've taken a seat on the left of the player who I think is the most active, most gambling player. Although this player up here at the top, he's also quite active, but I would say he knows what he's doing. So the strategy in this game is pretty much the same as the other games I play. Looking to have nutted draws, nut low draws, good high draws. Looking generally to keep the pot small. We're playing deeper now than some of the other games in my other videos, but we're still looking to keep the pot small until at least the turns. So this player raised pre-flop, and now he's potting this river. So he likely has ace deuce, and his betting is low. My high isn't very strong, so if I call here, there's a good chance that I'm getting nothing with my ace three. I think I'm just gonna fold this one. There's a chance that somehow my 10-6 was good. Not a very good chance. There's a chance that my ace-3 was good, but it might only have gotten me a quarter. Definitely can only get me a half, so I wasn't going to call the full bet there just to try to get my money back. So in this game, actually limp in a lot. Just try to be speculative. You'll notice this hand here, I flopped the nuts, but I'm not betting it because I don't want to make a big pot. The good thing about my hand is I have two kings, so I'm blocking the other nuts, but there, that card right there, that's exactly why I didn't bet the flop, because someone with ace, king, queen is free rolling against me. Someone who has, two pair and ace, king might have called, and really in Omaha high-low, like in every every poker game, like Hold'em or other Omaha games, what matters is how good is your hand going to be on the river. But in Omaha high-low 6-card, really your hand strength on the flop doesn't tell you much about your hand. It's all going to come down to the river. So here, I've got the second nuts. But anybody who has a king and one of these Broadway cards also has the king high straight. I don't really see a lot of reason to bet. I don't know if someone with 8 queen would call with a queen high straight. So I'm pretty confident I have the best hand. I just don't think players are calling if I bet. So I'm just going to check. So that player there, he had 8 jack or 8-10 for the queen high straight. So might have given up some value there, but didn't want to get raised. So I didn't bet an extra $200 or whatever I could have bet. This hand's pretty bad. I guess I can complete with it, but there's not a lot of good flops. And there I got raised in the big blind, so I'm just going to fold. So this is something a little different than my other videos. This table might fill up. We might play a full ring game. I know all these players pretty well. So I've been dealt an okay but a not great hand here on the button. I got ace deuce, which is kind of a basic requirement for most of the hands you want to play, and I'm suited. But my other cards, it's nice to have the suited king, but the 9-8-7 really don't add a lot of value to my hand. I think any kind of raise here is acceptable. I'm going to bet close to pot and just try to take the pot down right now because there's a good chance I have the best hand right now, and I definitely have a playable hand, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong. My hand doesn't have a lot of backup strength. Oh, this is interesting. So I raised and got re-raised, kind of squeezed, and then a very active player who I know likes to gamble shoved on the big blind. Now this player, when he does that, there's actually a lot of hands he does that with. You could have ace-ace, and you could have ace-deuce, and anyone who has an ace-deuce has a better ace-deuce than me, almost certainly. It's hard to imagine my ace-deuce-7 is the best ace-deuce. I do have a suited ace and a suited king, but I'm going to be behind a lot of other ace-deuce hands. I think I can justify jamming in here. I can't be too far behind. I think actually I am going to jam it in. I was thinking of folding. I was leaning towards fold, but knowing that I can't be too far behind in this hand. Well, I got pretty lucky there. Actually was further behind. I was up against two different ace-deuce-4s. My diamonds were really my only good hope there, so I think folding would have been correct. Kind of talked myself into a call. But I was up against two ace-deuce-4s and a better ace-king. Ace-king, queen-jack is a good hand. The player who jammed it in had ace-deuce-4, 7, 9-jack, so I kind of actually do like my hand better than his. His ace-deuce-4 is better than my just ace-deuce-7, but my high cards are all better than his high cards. And we actually had the same suits. But I was a suited ace and a suited king. He was a suited ace and a suited jack. Anyway, I guess I just got lucky there. So this is a good flop for my hand. Still have the backdoor low, but I've got a gut shot and most importantly the nut flush draw. So I think this hand is too good to check right now, and I could pot it. I think I don't need to. I think I'm going to bet kind of closer to 2/3 of the pot, a little more than 2/3 of the pot, and that was enough to take it down. So I didn't have any pairs there, so there was a good chance that my opponent has top two or a set, and he could have had some straight draws that might be interested in seeing another card. But betting and taking that pot down is good. I think check calling, I think, is sometimes okay against the right opponents too. Check raising sometimes, if your opponent is likely to fold to check raises. Some players don't very often, but I think just leading out, and I'm not too worried about playing a bigger pot, because on the turn I'll have an idea if I'll know if my low draw is still active. I'll know if I'll be able to know like exactly what my outs are on the turn, and if the board pairs, then you can just give up. So I actually don't think counterintuitively that you're going to get put in a lot of difficult spots on the turn in a bigger pot, because you're going to know exactly how many outs you have generally, and even if you don't know what your opponent has, you'll probably know what price you need to call. Anyway, hopefully we can talk more about that in a hand that does actually go to the turn. So while I was reviewing that previous hand, I think this new player who sat down stacked a couple of these other guys. I didn't see the hand, but this right here already, we're in another $6,000 pot here on the turn. And that ace, of course, is a big card on the turn. Someone who had ace deuce might not like their hand unless they had ace deuce four. Someone with, there that player shows ace three, so he had a great low to start. Well, I mean pre-flop, he had the potential for a great low and then gets totally counterfeited. And of course, you don't ever want those two pairs. You want to hit your low. Because the nut low is going to win you half the pot a lot more than two pairs aces, pairs threes is going to. So this is kind of interesting here. This player raises under the gun. And my hand, it looks kind of pretty. I got a suited ace, suited king, pair of jacks. Just the ace three on its own is pretty weak. You really need to see a deuce on the flop. I'm just going to fold this one, which is pretty snug fold, but I would play if I had ace three, four, I think. But just the ace three on its own, even when you do see that deuce on the flop and you get excited, you know, if you have an 8 deuce flop or a 5 deuce flop and you're excited because now you're drawing to the nut low, you just have no backup. And when the turn comes an ace or the river comes a 3 and you're counterfeited that way, it can just put you in such a bad spot. And not to mention, when my opponent raises under the gun, a lot of times he's going to have ace deuce 3, or he could have ace 3, 4, 5. So you think you're drawing for half the pot, but maybe you're only drawing for a quarter of the pot and giving your opponent a chance to free roll on top of that. So that naked ace 3, which is, that would have been, don't get me wrong, that would have been a great hand in 4 card and maybe even in 5 card. I mean, certainly if you had ace king jack jack 3 double suited, I like that. But in 6 card, when someone raises under the gun, it's just so rare that your ace 3 is going to be drawing to the best low. So that's why I fold that. And some people would play it. And some people might even re-raise it. But again, I don't think that's where my edge is in this game. I think there's going to be enough times when I'm on the other side of it. My opponent has that ace king jack jack 3 and I've got ace king deuce 3 something, and just a better draw. You know, we might go on to the flop or the turn looking like we're going to split the pot, but I've just got more redraws that give me more equity for that turn and river, and that's really what I'm looking for. And I'm thinking about the other hand where I had the ace deuce 7. Definitely a lone ace deuce is better than a lone ace 3. But I guess one nice thing about getting it all in 3-way, or you know, theoretically 4-way, where everyone has ace deuce, is you're not going to be counterfeited with very often. If your opponents also all have ace deuce, you're either all going to hit the low or none of you are going to hit the low, I guess. But that's not a good reason to get in pre-flop with the worst low. But as long as you got ace deuce, you've always got a chance at that low. So this is actually a much bigger game. You know, my other videos, I play a lot of 25-50. Obviously 50-100 is twice as big, but also the other game I play is limited to 20 big blinds for the maximum buy-in. This game you can come in for either 50, anywhere from 50 to 100 big blinds. I came in today for 50. And that's what most players in this game do. Some will sit down with the full 100 big blinds. But this is a big game for me. 5100 is a big game. I do play it regularly, but it's the biggest game I play. So for a couple reasons, I'm comfortable coming in just with the 50 big blinds. And you can build up a stack pretty quick, so everyone can get pretty deep. So now it's coming to me. I've got a suited ace deuce, which is nice, but it's 4 clubs, which really hurts the value of the hand. I only have the 1 suit. Ace queen jack is okay. It's not exceptional. The 8-6 kind of danglers. You could justify raising this, especially there's a lot of weakness, but it's not really important to me that I pick up like a lot of equity pre-flop, so I'm just going to check there, and I hit a nice hand. Hopefully my hand is disguised a little bit. I do have top pair, which is always nice to go with ace deuce. You'd want a little more than that. I'm going to play this really aggressive, I think, and just pot out. Hopefully my hand is disguised a little. If someone has ace 5, I guess I want them to call, but there's so many straight draws and just hands that are better than a pair of 8s that could continue with me. So pretty happy to lead out and take down that pot. I wouldn't be too disappointed being called either, because I'm confident when all those players limp in that they don't have ace deuce. They'd have to have a pretty ugly ace deuce to limp in the way they did, knowing the way they play. And I don't know if anyone watching this video would be thinking, well, maybe slow play that ace deuce, but I don't think you want to slow play lows, because low can only get you half the pot. And yeah, I can improve my high with a pair of 8s, but I wasn't. Let me go back. The only straight I can make is a 5, which would be a great straight for me because I have the ace deuce and the 6, so I'd have the wheel and the 6 high. But if I'm slow playing that, yeah, I could build up a pot a little bit. But again, I'm in trouble if an ace or a deuce comes. And most of the time when the pot gets really big, I'm just going to be getting half. So I'd rather play it fast to try to get the whole thing. Because when you just end up with half the pot, really all you're getting back is the money you put in. There's an animation from the table. They have some pretty obnoxious animations in this club. You have to pay extra. You have to pay money to the app. It's not actually the club, it's the app. You have to pay to use those animations, the emojis, and some of them are pretty obnoxious, which I guess is great if you want to bother your opponents and maybe put them on tilt. But just to sum up what I was saying before, I don't think it's really worthwhile to slow play lows. I think you want to use your low to scoop, to bet and end up with the whole hand. Not really a scoop, but end up taking down the whole pot. If I had a nut flush draw, that'd be a different story, because then you got one half of the pot locked down, and you've got a great chance to improve to a scoop. So that I might, not bet or bet half the pot. But when really the only way I can improve is with an 8 or a 5 or a 2 pair that's usually not going to hold up. Pretty happy to take it down there. This deuce 3, probably not worth playing, and this 9-8-7, I think 9s and 8s are the worst cards, and 6 card, so I'm not going to play this hand. Now the player who I was basically sitting down for on my right, he just left. Oh, he left a while ago. Never mind. And I don't feel like this game is that great anymore. This player here, who's been lucky, I guess, has the big stack. He's pretty solid. This player up top, he is very active, very aggressive, and I've seen him tilt and spew a lot of money, but he does have a good sense for the game, and he's actually quite dangerous with his aggression, and he'll bet you off a lot of hands. So he's not someone that I am eager to play with. Here's a $37,000 pot. Let's see what happened. They both flopped ace-9, and the more aggressive guy that I was just talking about, he actually was kind of free rolling on that low. He had the better low draw with deuce-3, 8, and the other guy just had a 3-4, so the other guy couldn't win the low unless a deuce came. He could have... Nope, that's it. So I raised aces, and I got re-raised by this player who seems to re-raise quite a bit. And I'm double suited, ace, king, queen, so I'm not going to fold, although I don't have a great low. So I'm looking for a high only type flop. Really missed everything here. My low draw is still behind ace deuce, ace 3, deuce 3. I don't have any kind of straight draw. Only have one backdoor flush draw. So I hate to be this weak, but I think against this pot, I'm just going to lay it down. Really no cards can improve my hand, so if I call, I'm really hoping that a pair of aces somehow wins, or that a deuce or a 3 comes on the turn or river to give me half the pot. So I think I just got to lay this one down. So the pot raise comes on the button, called by the small blind, and I'm going to see a flop with my suited ace, deuce, jack, jack. Oh, that's a great flop for me. Nut full house, and I do have an ace deuce if it comes running low cards. That's really my fear when when you flop full house, is you might want to slow play it, but if a low comes, then you lose half the pot a lot of the time. So, but in this case, I don't even really need to worry about that. So I think there's a lot of different ways I can play this. I think I'm getting called by any 7. So I think I can lead out. But I'm actually just going to slow play it a little bit. Everybody folds. So I like this card, actually. Because now someone who has 7-6 feels better about their hand. This guy's betting 2/3 of the pot. Really why I like this card is because it's going to keep the low cards. And one player potted pre-flop, another player called. So it's going to keep anyone who has the low draw in this hand. So this guy cold called he called the pot pre-flop from the small blind. So there's a really good chance he has ace deuce. And so I'm going to raise him, and he's now re-raising me. So there's a really good chance now that this guy has ace deuce, feels good about his draw. He could have jack 7 or 7-6. Hopefully he doesn't have pocket 7s with ace deuce, but I'm obviously not folding, so here we go. Yeah, he's got jack 7 with ace 3. Oh, he got very, very lucky. He got very, very lucky. I had him drawing totally dead. I had him completely scooped unless a deuce comes. And sure enough, a deuce came. So that's quite unfortunate. He only had 3 outs, and they were only for half the pot. I don't know. This is a terrible hand to have trips in your hand, but for just another, for just completing in the small blind, I'll take a look. But yeah, that's a bad beat. He had 3 outs. He had to counterfeit. He didn't have any other low, so to counterfeit my low, he had to hit just a deuce, any card other than a deuce, and I scoop him. No, that's well, or a 7. So he had 1 out for the scoop, being the 7, and then he had 3 outs for half the pot, being his being that deuce. So very unlucky. Had him in a great spot there. So that was a $6,000 card, because that was a $12,000 pot that I pretty much had locked up. Better than if a 7 comes, I guess. But so I probably didn't need to slow play that hand because he already had Jack 7. But I hope you followed my rationale for slow playing it, which was pretty much had the high locked up. You know, what I'm worried about is if someone has pocket kings or pocket queens and a king or a queen comes. But I pretty much had the high locked up, and in that case, I don't have to, well, I thought I didn't have to worry about a low coming. If I didn't have my ace deuce, I might not slow play that flop the same way. And it's worth mentioning, when you have an ace, when you have 2 low cards in your hand, or 2 or 3 low cards in your hand, and 1 low card comes on the flop, the chance of there being a low by the river is about 20, 22, 24%. So so you do need to factor that into your decision making. Now, as I was saying before that hand, the player who I was most eager to play against has left this table. I didn't see if he left with chips or not, and I'm not going to go back and check now. But this game, to me, isn't as good as it was before, and I would probably leave. But this game actually has a call time feature in it, which you see on some of these clubs. And what that means is when you're winning, you have to stay and play a certain number of hands or a certain amount of time at the table. On this table has the most restrictive call time I've seen so far, which is you have to play 60 minutes. You have to play a full hour after you're winning. You can lose, or you can leave at any time when you're losing. So if I give up the chips that I've won and go back down to my initial buy-in or lower, I could leave then. But I'm not able to leave this table while I'm still a winner until I've played an hour as a winner. So far I've played about 30 minutes as a winner, which is the length of this video. And actually, I'm just going to complete here in the small blind because this guy, I know he likes to repot. Well, he didn't that time, but that's okay. I don't feel like I gave up any equity there, because this game to me isn't about how you play pre-flop. So I do have to continue to play for another 30 minutes. That was the point of that. It's just kind of a house rule, club rule to prevent people from hitting and running. 60 minutes I find is very restrictive, but everybody has to abide. If I do leave the table or shut off my machine, I'll just continue to post blinds and antes, which is not, obviously I don't want to give up 50 and 100 blinds and 20 ante for half an hour, so I'm going to stick it out. Hopefully we just get one more situation like that, like we had with that full house and the nut low draw against a worse full house and a worse low draw. Those are the perfect situations that you're looking for in this high-low. And to me it is telling that player, if you recall what he had ace-3. I believe he had a 9. Well, he had ace-3, jack-7, and I believe a 9. And he didn't have any other low cards. Maybe his other card was a queen. But it's interesting that player in the small blind, so in the worst position, called a pot size bet from the button. So he's either confident that player is just potting on the button pretty loosely, or he's happy to play just naked ace-3s for a low, which, as I've said before, I don't think are good enough in this PLO6. This isn't a good hand. Deuce 3, 4, something, but the paired deuces is terrible. It just reduces the chance of you making a low, and a set of deuces is a terrible high hand. It's rarely going to win anything for you. This king, queen, queen, jack, jack, 3. The 3 is a dangler, obviously. I think I'm going to fold just because this player behind me so often 3-bets. It was intriguing, the king, queen, queen, jack, jack, because you can make some straights. Really, without the ace, though, it's just not a great hand. I suppose if you somehow made a straight and a set, that would be nice, but don't like this hand. It's probably good enough to steal with before the flop, but it's not really what I'm here to play for. Don't want to limp in with it because I don't think it's strong enough to call a re-raise. And this is exactly why you don't want to play a hand like this. If I had played right now, I'd have a 10 high flush, which I wouldn't be very comfortable with, and I'd have my ace 5 low, which I wouldn't be very comfortable with. So you're basically just calling every street, hoping the board doesn't pair, hoping, maybe for a deuce or a 4 to improve your low chances, but you don't know where you are in the hand. You don't know if you're going to get half or scooped. When players are betting, it's almost impossible that you're ahead. Would have finished with the second nut. Well, I guess 4 or 5 diamonds is also there, so the third nut. But don't want to play hands that lead to harder decisions. Want to play hands where I'm putting my opponents into those tough spots. No, I don't like this hand. 3, 4, 5, not a good low. 4 suits for only queen high flush draw. So this player had called 2 bets, flop and pot on the turn. Now potting the river. Wow, and he gets quartered. So that's the danger. He did have a straight on the flop, which I guess he didn't like as much on that turn because he was losing to 6-9 and 9 jack. And he didn't have a flush draw. The other player had 2 flush draws and the ace-3. So it goes to show a lot of times the draw is actually better than the made hand. And then he took a little risk, something you've seen me do before, where he potted. Well, we'll talk about that hand after. So right now I have the nut flush draw. I have the second nut low, and I have a set of 4s. So my hand is very, very strong. Deuce 3 is way ahead of me on the low, but I can't be too scared about that. So I'm going to bet out 2/3 of the pot. And this player, he plays very aggressively. I'm not surprised to see him do this. But he could be doing this with basically deuce 3 anything. He could be doing this with straight draw, a big wheel draw. He could be doing this with the set, but with my bottom set and having the king high flush as a backup and the second nut low, I'm not going anywhere, so I'm just going to jam this one in, and we'll see. He's just got deuce 3. So he had deuce 3 and the queen high flush draw, so you can kind of see the rationale for his play. He didn't really have a way. He didn't really have a way to scoop me. He couldn't really. He wasn't in contention for the high because he didn't have a pair. So he needs to hit a 5 to make a straight. So he needed an offsuit 5 to scoop me. So he had 3 outs. And I needed a 3 to come. So he had 3 outs to scoop me. Otherwise, he's only getting half. And if a 3 came, I would scoop him. So I had 3 outs to scoop him. So really, I guess we were just destined to split that pot. So I guess he figured he was free rolling, and he kind of was. He's probably in worse shape than he imagined he was. But then for me, I didn't really have a way to scoop him. I just had the 3 outs for the low. So much to do about nothing. Oh yeah, but we were talking about the other hand. So that player on that river, he did something you've seen me do before, where he let out with the ace-3. He potted the river with his low, trying to represent maybe the flush, trying to get his opponent to fold, which might have worked if his opponent didn't have the flush. But his opponent also had ace-3, so he ended up being quartered, which is the big risk you take when you're betting with really just a low. He did also have a straight, but it seemed like that straight's not going to win a lot. And that's why the nut draws are important. You can say that he was unlucky, but that pot might have gotten a little bit out of control. He did flop the nut straight with the second nut low. But again, I've said this before, if your hand can't improve, having the nuts on the flop doesn't really mean that much, especially if you're pretty deep. This player min-raised on the button, and I'm just going to call with my hand. Didn't really flop much there. Need to hit a 5 or an 8 for a straight. I have the second nut low draw, backdoor flush draw. This player bets half the pot. I think I can peel 1. That's not really a good card for me. Didn't help my low. Could have counterfeited his low. Well, that's a good card. So now I have a straight, and now my low is behind deuce 3 and deuce 6, but I don't think he has deuce 3 because I think he would have bet if he had deuce 3. I was thinking of leading out here to try to get him to fold maybe a bigger, a little flush, but I'm thinking now maybe I'm just going to be happy with my showdown value. Just check here. Yeah. So again, I don't think he's going to call with any worse high hand. I don't know if he would ever talk himself into calling there with an 8 low. So we don't know what he had there. Probably that ace counterfeited his low. If he had ace deuce or ace 3 on the flop. I don't really like this hand, but I'll complete in the small blind with it. Jack high flush, the king on board, so worried about the ace high flush and the queen high flush. I think I can just check here. Could lead out to try to see where I'm at. There's no low draw on board, so no one should be calling unless they have a better flush. Maybe someone calls with a set, but I only have one pair, so I can't really make a full house. And yeah, I'm just going to give up this jack high flush. I'm not going to call 3 streets with the jack high flush. Now this is interesting. The other player calls, so if he doesn't have the ace high flush, is he calling with the queen high flush, or is he just calling with a set, trying to pair up? And now the river puts a low on board, which adds some more intrigue. It does counterfeit the ace 3 if someone had ace 3. Oh, I guess we're going to see. Oh, he was calling with the queen high flush. And no real low. Oh, he had top 2 as well, king 10. So he did have chances to river the ace high. And the player who was leading out almost certainly just had the lone ace of hearts in his hand. Figured that was a good card to bluff with, because I don't think he can pot that turn without that card in his hand. It's interesting that he checked the river. Just wanted to give up, I suppose. I think that 3 actually is kind of a good card to bluff. Because if your opponent was calling with ace 3, which I believe he was. No, he had ace 5. But if your opponent was calling down with ace 3, maybe, like if he has the queen high flush and he's calling with ace 3, maybe he has second thoughts when you bet that river. He doesn't have a low. Or maybe not. Maybe it's a good check. I don't love this hand. double suited queens, would rather have my ace be suited. It is ace deuce, but I've said so many times, ace deuce, I don't even consider it a good low draw in this game. Yeah, and now I'm in a really bad spot. Well, a really complex spot anyway, because I've got the straight draw. I have no chance for a low, and about 60 or 70% of the time there's going to be a low by the river. In fact, it's even if a 7 comes to make my straight, a lot of the time there's going to be that low. I do have the ace of diamonds though, which, as we just talked about, is a good card to bluff with. I'm just going to check. Well, that's one of the better turn cards I'd hope with. There's still no low. And I now have the nut straight. And I have 2 queens, so I'm blocking the straight a little bit. I don't have a good redraw. I don't think I can get anyone to fold this straight. I think the only reason to raise there would be just to fold out someone who just has ace-3 in their hand without really having, maybe if they have ace-3, jack, 8-8 or something, they're going to fold. Just to try to save myself half the pot. So this is an interesting card because I now have the nut straight and I can represent the nut flush. So I'm just going to bet here. Well, he probably didn't even have the straight when he folds. He didn't even think about it. So maybe I should have raised the turn. If I get called there, a lot of the time I'm being quartered. So that was something of a risky bet. Might not even have been a good bet. I mean, if he folded any low at all, it's a good bet because I had no low. So even if his low was, 5-7, that's a good bet. So here I have second set, but my hand's really built for a low. I think there's a lot of ways to play this hand, but I'm just going to check it. Because my hand can't improve. Well, it can improve if a 3 comes, but there, that's why I checked. Because I'd actually rather see that turn before I commit. I don't know if I bet out. Would he fold if he has just king queen? Probably. Would he fold if he has jack king queen? I think definitely not. And I don't have any kind of flush draw. If I call and the river comes a jack or a 10, how often is my full house good? No, I'm just folding. I think if the turn was an 8, I would call, or a 7, because then I have the low draw to go with my set. But it's an interesting question. Did I let him get there? Well, obviously I did let him get there because I didn't bet. But I think seeing the turn before I commit much more money doesn't hurt me. And I'm not really worried that I'm getting bluffed in that spot. No, I don't like this hand at all. Well, now I have the nut flush draw, and my spade draw could be good, because I think if he had the nut spade draw, he's betting that flop. No, I raise before the flop. I think we're going to run a little bluff here. I think it's hard for him to call down here if he doesn't have an ace-3 in his hand, and he's calling, so. But we rivered the nut high, so I think the best thing to do is to pot. Hopefully he's going to fold whatever low he has. I don't have a low myself. But if he has a low and 9-10, we're going to get quartered. So again, I think that's a good bet on the river because any low that he has would get half the pot, which would be disaster for us. And it's worth noting when there's 4 low cards on the board, he only needs 1 low card in his hand that doesn't you need 2 low cards in your hand, but only one of them. Well, any 2 low cards he has in his hand that if they don't both pair the board, gives him a low. If you don't understand how lows work in Omaha. So what I'm saying is on that turn, if you have ace deuce or ace 5 or ace 7, you don't have a low because you need 5 cards and you have to play 2 from your hand. If that's all you've got is those 2 low cards in your hand. Or if you have ace deuce 5 in your hand, you don't have a low because the 5 and the deuce are on the board. So you have to have 2 low cards in your hand that don't pair the board, or when that 4th low card comes, the 8, now he can play an ace deuce or an ace 5 that's in his hand. So that's what I mean when I say any card in his hand, any low card in his hand that goes along with any other low card, even if one of them pairs the board, as long as they don't pair the board. So even if he had 8-6 as his low, or 7-6, or any 2 cards. So definitely I think you have to bet there. Probably don't have to pot it, but bet there just so he doesn't get to realize any equity from his low. And again, I think if he had ace 3, he bets. I would have heard from him on that turn. So this hand, it's better than some of the other ace deuces I've had. I'd rather have ace deuce 3 or ace deuce 4 than ace deuce 5, but we have a suited ace. If you're going to have low cards, I guess it's good to have a couple of them so that you can make some straights. So here we flopped bottom 2, which isn't good. Only 1 low card. But having the nut flush draw really helps. So I think we can bet quite confidently and put some pressure on our opponents. Hard for them to continue. If they were calling with ace deuce or ace 3 before flop, that's not the flop they wanted. So most of the cards that are calling now are like a top 2 or jack 10 combos. This is interesting. That card doesn't change the nuts unless he has ace-ace. It would make him more confident if he's got deuce 3. I don't know why he would bet unless he's got pocket queens and he played it safe, which isn't usually how this guy plays. So is he betting now? He's just that confident with ace-queen? Or maybe he's got jack 10 king and he just likes it. He's just liking this board. He wanted to make sure that a flush card didn't come. Anyway, we're not folding. You know, with 3 or 4 on the river is going to give us a good low. Any heart is going to help us. Ace or 9 is interesting, so not folding. And there we go. That's the card we needed, unless he has jack 10 of hearts, of course. So now we go back to what did he have? He probably had jack 10 is what I feel like. He could have had pocket queens or pocket 9s. He could have turned pocket aces. Are these hands going to call any bets? If he has the jack of hearts in his hand, he might. Deuce 3, if he was just calling with like a deuce 3, queen 9, he's not calling any bets, but I think we can make a little bet here. No, he's not calling. Well, I feel like this has actually been a pretty conservative session. Not the most exciting hands. To me, the most exciting hand was when we had that near free roll for 12,000, where we had that 6,000 locked up. He only had one out to get that top half of the pot. And then he only had the 3 outs to get the bottom half, and ended up getting back the bottom half there, the low, for 6,000. To me, that was the most interesting hand, or the most exciting one. Maybe not the most interesting. But talked through all of our decisions. Hopefully that was helpful. This is just kind of a everyday session. Had a chance to go up 6,000 in that one hand. It didn't work out, but those are just the spots you hope for. It's always good to be on the right side as many of those as you can be. That's just poker when it doesn't work out your way. So I hope this was an interesting video. This is my first 50-100 video. Hopefully I'll be making some more in the future. Might actually see some big 20K, 30K pots eventually. This hand I think you can fold or call. I think either way is fine. I was getting good pot odds, so I called, but that's almost the flop you want, I suppose. It's a good reason why you shouldn't play this hand is a lot of times when you make your straight, there's a low on board, so you're playing for half the pot. Obviously, when a flush comes, I'm not playing that. Not going to play that straight. But anyway, just going to wrap it up. Going to play one more round, and then my call time is going to be over. And then I'll sit out on my big blind. So hopefully it's interesting to watch someone play 50-100, see what it's like. Still poker. Oh wow, this hand is so awful. I'm getting good pot odds, but pot odds for what? Ugh, I think I could have even just justified a fold there, but I think either way isn't a mistake. So I flopped open-ended, which isn't even, it's not good. If I make my straight, it's going to bring the low on board, and I don't have a good low draw, and I don't have a club draw. Well, now this is interesting because now I have the second best low. Deuce 3 is a better low, but I have the second best low. Nobody's shown any interest in this pot, so I'm going to run just a standard little bluff here. Hopefully these guys just muck their hands. Well, I made the wheel, and I've got the 7 high straight, so I've got the nut low. If he has deuce 5, which he could have a lot of the time, he could easily have me quartered if he's got a flush and deuce 5, but it's way too passive to check here, so I'm gonna lead out. Yeah, and he re-raises me. So he could have deuce 5 with clubs, but I do have that straight to the 7, so I'm gonna call here. A lot of times here I'm being quartered, which isn't ideal, but at least I know I'm going to get at least that back. And I think some of the times here, I think there's some occasions where I'm getting half or I'm quartering him, so I think calling is justified. Yeah, so like I said, I was just getting half. So that's fine. And again, I think it's just too passive to check there, because there's times when I'm quartering him if he just has deuce 5 and doesn't have the higher straight. I think there's times, he might look me up, he might not have the low, and he might look me up with, just if he has just 5-6 without the deuce, he could have had, 3-5-6 in his hand. He could have had, you know, a missed spade draw with some combination, some set or something. I'm not going to try to steal here. Just going to check and hope for a low club on the turn, which doesn't come. So just mucking now. Oh, I really don't like ace 3-5. I think ace 3-4 is okay. Ace 3-5 is not good. Okay, I'm glad this guy potted. I'm just folding. Even though I have a suited ace and a suited king. 6-6. I don't even want to flop a set of sixes, really. It's rarely going to make the best hand. Ace 3-5 is just not as good a low. If someone has ace deuce 5, you're way behind. Ace 3-4, you're behind, so. So I'm gonna sit out on the next big blind. I think I have one more hand, two more hands, and that's gonna be the end of this video. Thanks for sticking with me. Let me know what your favorite part of the video was, if there's something you didn't like, if you thought I made a mistake, somewhere you disagreed with me. Oh, here's a big hand right here. $21,000 pot. Nut flush draw against top two. Wow. I would way rather have that nut flush draw. And he had the gutter and the backdoor low draw. I would way rather have that in my hand than top two. But somehow that guy held top two for $21,000 pot. Must be nice, man. That's a lot of confidence. And the reason I would rather have the gutter and the ace high flush draw. Oh, he had a double gutter. So he had a double gutter, the ace high flush draw, and the backdoor low draw. And the reason I say I'd rather have that than, I'm just gonna fold my last hand, than the top two is, one, mathematically, I think your equity is actually a little more than 50%, or it's damn close to it. And two, at least when you're drawing to the nuts, you know where you are. And you know if you hit, you're gonna win. Where when you have top two, if your opponent flips over top set or middle set, you're so far behind. It's just disastrous. So it takes a lot of confidence or something else to put your money in with just top two like that. But that's it for me. I'm out. Thanks, guys. Let me know what you think.